We're going to certainly return to this, but we want to turn now to national political reporter for Axios, Jonathan Swan, who has incredible new reporting for Axios on what was happening behind the scenes at one of the tensest moments between a president and the military in modern history. The reporting is for the final episode of his Off the Rails series entitled Trump's War with His Generals. And Jonathan, I'm stunned at what I'm reading here in terms of President Trump's then attempt to address the Afghanistan situation and how he had a withdrawal plan, that's for sure, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment, but no peace plan, which is what President Biden has to deal with now. But it's this piece of paper where they had some directions scrawled out that included get us out of Afghanistan, get us out of Iraq and Syria, complete withdrawal from Germany, get us out of Africa. That was the president communicating with one of his top generals through an assistant.
Yeah, so this is November the 9th. So just to put it in context, it's 6 days after Donald Trump has lost the election. And his former body man, John McEntee, 31-year-old former college football quarterback, was brought back into government to run the Office of Presidential Personnel. He calls up a retired Army Colonel, Douglas Macgregor, a highly controversial figure who's basically been excommunicated from the military establishment, calls him into his office in the Executive Office building, sits him down. John McEntee has just come from the Oval Office and presents him with this piece of paper and says, this is what the president wants you to do. And it's the list that you just read out. And, you know, this is not just, OK, we've talked about Afghanistan and it's a big deal and he wanted him to get out before the end of the presidency, which to David Ignatius's credit, he was the first to report that order, which was then Trump was talked out of that order. But Trump wanted to go much broader. He was asking through McEntee to complete a withdrawal out of Germany, which would have completely reshaped America's role in the world, our alliances, our relationship with NATO. And, you know, this is not some sort of incremental decision. This is, you know, he'd already ordered a drawdown from Germany. This would have been one of the most radical foreign policy decisions we've seen in modern history. And Douglas Macgregor is not exactly some person who's cautious about withdrawing from the world. He's someone who has gone on Fox News and, you know, attacked congressional leadership and the Pentagon leadership as idiots and ridiculed their policies and basically gone for a completely maximalist get out of everywhere in the Middle East policy. Even Douglas Macgregor was like, yeah, I don't know if we could do this before the end of the presidency. So, you know, that gives you a sense of where things were at.
We have David Ignatius with us, who you just mentioned. David has a question.
John, great reporting. Let me ask you the question that really haunted me when I was looking at some of these same events, and that is, what was the Trump inner circle's plan if they could have somehow derailed Biden's election victory and gone on to January 20. Did you look into what role these military moves might have played in their larger scheme, or were these just specific ad hoc moves in your judgment?
I never got the sense, and I've done, you know, dozens and dozens of hours of reporting on these events and talked to pretty much everyone who's had proximity to them. I don't get a sense there was a larger plan. It was Trump completely obsessed with, you know, reaching and grabbing for whatever he could to try and derail this transition, to try and overturn the results of a Democratic election and obstruct Joe Biden getting into power. And there was this sort of parallel track where he was trying to, you know, get all of this stuff done that he'd been talking about for 4 years and never actually gotten done, but would have potentially put Biden in an extremely dangerous position. And this is what General Milley and others, you know, went to the Oval and said to the president is, if you try to withdraw at this precipitous rate, Kabul could fall, all of these events could happen in Afghanistan. And they managed to talk Trump out of it. But the argument, I actually reached out to him for comment for this story, and he ended up talking to me on the phone. And he was obsessed with the equipment The argument that seemed to resonate with Donald Trump was, let's not leave all this expensive equipment behind. So that seemed to be the thing that, they always use arguments that appeal to his transactional nature. And this seemed to be the one that just barely kept America engaged in Afghanistan so that Biden could actually approach this in a deliberative fashion.
You look at Donald Trump's political career and you see that he really he was transactional in most of his beliefs. He moved, he changed radically on abortion. He changed radically on guns. He changed radically on all these other issues. But Katty Kay, the one issue that Donald Trump has been consistent with over the decade is his bedrock belief that Americans are suckers, that we fight everybody else's war, that we spend all of our money on everybody else, that we're suckers in trade deals, that we're suckers by going into Iraq, that we're suckers for for protecting other countries. And so it's interesting, this fascinating reporting is actually the one thing, I think, where there is a consistent through line from seeing Donald Trump on the Today Show in 1988 calling us suckers for letting Japan basically buy all of the property that he wanted to buy, that through line through 2020, where he just didn't think that we should give anything to anybody or fight any wars for anybody but ourselves.
No, I mean, he never seemed to believe that there was any benefit to the U.S. from alliances or relationships that have been built up over decades, that America was only losing out. It was never going to win anything from any of those alliances. But Jonathan, I want to flip it a little bit. Trump thought America was suckers for getting into things. Take the Afghan example, for example. Did you get any reporting on whether the Afghans thought that kind of Trump was being suckered? Did they think that Trump or the generals were, in the end, in the driving seat?
Yeah, that's a really interesting wrinkle in the story. So there were classified NSA intercepts that were viewed by several top administration officials. And in one of these conversations, there were Afghan officials talking to each other, and they were under the strong impression that General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the other leaders of the uniformed military were basically going to ignore Donald Trump, slow roll him, and not withdraw troops on the precipitous timeline that the president was publicly calling for. So it was certainly among senior Afghans the impression that General Milley was holding the line against Donald Trump in those final days.
All right, national political reporter for Axios, Jonathan Swan, thank you very much for coming on this morning.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.